Hello, it's Laurie French, and I'm very proud to serve as president of the Canadian School Board Association, and we're back for a second session with Irvine Carvery. Irvine is an experienced leader, a trustee, and proud African Nova Scotian. Irvine school boards govern through policies. What do they need to focus on as policy makers, especially as systems prepare for a gradual return to school?
Well, policies are key, Laurie. All of our direction and our actions follow the policies. So it's very critical that trustees and school boards take a look at their hiring policies, their curriculum policies, and very important that they take a look at how they interact with their unions. Teachers' unions are a partner in education. And we need to engage our unions in terms of the work that needs to be done, particularly in the area of hiring. What we found here in Nova Scotia, in my board, Halifax Regional School Board, was that there were some union policies around seniority that prevented the hiring of African Nova Scotian teachers. And so we had to engage our unions to have that discussions. And unions, given the nature of unions themselves, they should be open to that discussion because they themselves need to take a look within their own organization to see if there are systemic racism problems within the union itself. So I believe that the work with unions is critical, but curriculum is so very, very important that so that our African Canadian and our Indigenous students see themselves within that curriculum. You know, both groups, in particular Indigenous Canadians, they have a very long history here in this country, thousands of years. That should be reflected in our curriculum as spoken through the voices of First Nations peoples. African Canadians have been here as long as the English and the French, and they too share a very rich and vibrant history, particularly in the building of this country. That history is so depressed, little known throughout the country. I think about my own community of Africville and the history of Africville, which we have done tremendous work in educating people on that history. But when we first began, nobody knew about Africville outside of Nova Scotia. So there are histories to be learned, histories to be shared. There are some prominent Canadian figures who both Indigenous and African Canadian that should be spoke about in our schools. And that in itself allows our students in the school system to see themselves reflected within the curriculum, which encourages them to strive to better outcomes for their own selves. And the last thing that I want to talk about is I would urge boards, trustees, to bring in an expert eye to review your policies and your procedures to see if within those policies and procedures there are some biases that are negative towards African Canadians and Indigenous people, because you need to have that person look at it, because you yourself, you're not going to see it because it's not recognized. That's a part of your personal growth that I talked about when I talked about earlier about that professional development. So I think it's critical that every policy and every procedure be reviewed with an anti-Black and Indigenous racism lens.
Thank you for that. This is so important as trustees fulfill their governance role that is driving the policies across their school system and ensuring that the issues and any practices that might create bias in those policies, whether it's their decision-making model, through to curriculum and other processes around hiring that you've mentioned. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.